Okay, very good. Let me start with the presentation. So welcome everybody to the seminar about digital solutions for resilient seed systems. My name is Jacob van Etten. I hope you've already seen at least some of the introductory videos. So today we'll be talking about 5 different applications or digital solutions that all focus on seed systems. So I work at the Alliance of Biodiversity International and CIAT, and we organize this seminar together with ISSD Africa. And the 2 organizations have been collaborating quite a bit about on this topic, and each of the organizations is sharing a number of solutions. So I'm not going to repeat the introduction that is already in the video, and but I have 3 slides that are more general about like the approaches to develop digital solutions. So the first thing is, I hope to think my screen is, technology is not collaborating today. My screen is not collaborating. There we go. So one principle that we use for developing digital solutions is user-centered design, which ensures a design that is leading to a solution that can really be used by the user. So it's not the opposite would be programmer-centered design. So the solution starts with this process of empathizing with users. What are the problems? What are the issues? What are the needs? Defining what is the context and the problems, and then developing ideas to address those issues through different exercises, which are quite explicit and link different parts of the problem with different possible solutions, sometimes in other spheres. So finding inspiration also in existing solutions and see what can be adapted to what we have at hand. And then this last bit is very important, what we call prototyping and testing, which means that before we kind of go to the implementation of a kind of a final digital solution, we do a lot of user testing that is iterative. So it's not that we build a prototype, we test, and then that's it. We make a prototype, we see how users interact with it, we adjust it, improve it, and then at the end, in that kind of iteration, we have a final product. But that is something that is shown in the next slide is how a prototype could look like. Just to make you aware that even a prototype doesn't need to look like an actual solution. It can be a piece of paper where you draw something and you show that to the user. Is this clear? Right? It can be also, you can make fake websites, what we call wireframes, where you can even click on some buttons and stuff like that, but you don't really program everything that is behind it. You just make something like a mock-up that users can interact with, so that you can see if the concepts land, basically, and if they work with the user. So that avoids a lot of trouble, like a lot of investment in something that may not work, or ending up with something that doesn't work, and then you don't have more time in your project, and that's it. That's where you arrived. So this is a very important principle that we use in our own digital work. And then the last slide that I wanted to show about like general stuff is this idea of the principles for digital development. So there's a kind of widely adopted number of 9 principles that are used by different organizations to guide digital development. So also, if you write even a grant proposal to develop some new solution, you need to show how you're doing these different things. So design with the users, that's number 1. That's we already talked about. And then also these other things like understanding the existing ecosystem. Don't reinvent the wheel. If something already exists or something that is close to it, can you collaborate? Design for skill. Don't build a solution that only works for 10 people, but design something that could maybe work first for 10 people, then also is scalable to much larger groups. Build for sustainability, so even thinking about financial sustainability and long-term, like what happens when the project is over. Be data-driven. So there's a lot of ideas about how to use data, how to be also using open standards and open data. That's the next one. Reuse and improve. So don't build tools that already exist, but use open source tools that you can reuse and then improve, and give back to the community. Privacy and security are important. With legislation around that, and then be collaborative. So also in terms of understand the existing ecosystem, and then also collaborate with it and give back to it if you develop code contributing to open source projects. So that is also something we've done a lot in our work. We're members of several open source communities, and we have a lot of tools used by others as well to build their tools for data collection, but also for data analysis, for example. So that's what I wanted to say, and then we're going to the next part of the presentation, which is starting the panel discussion and Q&A from the participants. Thank you very much. So, James, do you want to launch your first question?
Okay, thanks, Jacob. Hello to everybody in the panel and the audience. My name is James Mulcairns, and I'm a network facilitator for the ISSD Africa Community of Practice. As you or many of you will have known, that we put some video explainers on the ISSD Africa website to introduce 5 tools, and people were given the opportunity to submit some questions on those tools. And there's one question in particular that we'd like to start off with. Ronnie, I had shared that question with you. Maybe you could take us through it.
Yeah, we'll hand over to Pitambar because he's
directly to Pitambar. Okay.
And he's happy he managed to join us. So Pitambar.
Can you repeat the question, please? I need to check my email again because.
Yeah, just to answer the questions from that we already received.
No, I need to find. Oh, sorry. James, do you have that question with you? I need to check in my email because I'm not ready now.
It's about the pricing of the.
About the
prices of the accessions. If you want to purchase them, why the app does not have the prices already included?
Yeah, I think. Thank you for this question. I think it's a good idea to put the price in each seat, but how we plan was like the person, if anyone wants to get any type of seat, they can directly talk to the custodian of community seed banks, and they can learn about the price and also process of getting that seed from that particular community seed bank. So that's why we did not include price. And those are, I mean, what we have included in that our seed app is basically local varieties, and in general, community seed banks provide that seed at a low rate of price normally, because the main objective is to promote conservation and utilization of genetic resources. That's why we didn't put the price tag in that seed app, but it can easily be asked with the person that is managing that community seed bank. So thank you. What was another question, Ronnie? Can you tell me again? There were two questions.
That was the main question. I just would like to add, because I think in some countries there are also online seed catalogs where you can actually order directly seed, but that is then usually ordered from a central organization or a central group. And so the seed app in Nepal is a really decentralized seed app in which every user can communicate directly with any of the community seed banks. So I think it's a kind of different principle in which we give the responsibility to the farmers who maintain, who conserve the seed, and we put it in their hands to make decisions about, do they want to share the seed, and if so, would they like a small compensation for it, or they give it for free. So I think it is set up in such a way to give this them. It's a kind of empowerment function, we could call it, which is different from seed catalogs online that exist in many countries, including here in the Netherlands, for example.
I would like to add one more point if I have time. Why we are not putting price tag is there are several. I mean, there are several varieties, and the price is like you have to keep changing, depending on the quantity of seed or demand of seed, So and since the seed app is managed or operated by Community Seed Bank Association of Nepal, and it's managed by a farmers organization, so it will be not that practical for them to keep changing those kind of things. They do update the information and photos and add the new varieties, new crops, but changing price every time is not that practical. That's why we didn't think about putting price tag in each variety. So thank you.
Great. Okay, thanks very much, Tamba. You can hear me, is that correct? Maybe one of you in the panel is not. Yeah, good. I'm a little bit of a fish out of water here on this system, so please bear with me. I'd also like to just remind everybody in the audience that you might not be able to see her, but Berta Ortiz is also joining us, but having a camera problem. Now, Berta was involved in the Seed Information Exchange, or really led the development of the Seed Information Exchange for Ethiopia, one of the cases we put on the website. Now, I'd like to just move on to another two questions that we have, and I'll ask a couple of the panelists here to jump into those. And the first is about adoption. Now, Jakob, in your introduction, you talked about user-centered design and prototyping. But what I'm really hoping to get from a few of you would be about how do you really boost this adoption? So once you have your prototype and you're rolling out a digital tool, what kind of activities do you engage in? What does that really look like to get people to adopt and start using digital tools like these? And if you are brave enough, what might you have done differently if you were to do this again? Perhaps Berta, since you're the silent partner here, I might call on you to go first, and then afterwards Arnab.
Okay, thank you, James. Yeah, so we really tried, and the prototyping we did in Ethiopia, we really tried to understand what was the needs and how we could digitalize part of the information of those information needs. So it ended up being quite of a complex process because we are working with seed producers, and we are not working with farmers, so it's more in the supply side. And the Ethiopian system is very, very complex. Like there is, like the government has a lot of control. It's a little bit like half public, so it's very, very complex. So we try to understand the information flows, and we try to create a platform that could mirror these information flows. Now in the side of adoption, I think even though you create a platform that is mirroring the information flows and it's like adapted to the needs of each stakeholder, it's still a challenge to have people using these tools in their everyday work. So that's something else we need to work better, because you just give one training and after one training you're expecting them to use the platform, but that's not the case. You need to do more follow-ups and like maybe walk them more through the piloting phase. Not that because you have a ready system means that they are going to use it. So yeah, that has been our experience in Ethiopia.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Now, Arnab, you were involved in 2 of these tools in Uganda and Myanmar, and I'm sure you've had quite some experiences in getting people up to scratch and getting them, helping people to use the 2 tools you worked on. Maybe you might, just for 20 seconds for each tool, just introduce or give the name of the tool and what it's supposed to do, and then tell us how you went about getting people using them.
Yeah, hi. Welcome everyone. Thanks, James. Basically, we had 2 tools, one for Myanmar and one for Uganda. But the one in Myanmar was basically it was done for the registration as well as working with the Department of Agriculture as well as the small private seed growers. The systems are just like Bertha has just now said, that the whole seed system or the seed systems are very complex in these countries. So the Myanmar application was primarily was done for rice, and the primary objective was to register and bring as many as seed producers who are producing seeds privately, but they are managing to get their fields certified, and how they're procuring the early generation seed and they are selling their certified seed. That was the primary objective, because the name application was EGS demand forecasting system. So EGS means the early generation seed. The seed systems is slightly different than anywhere else. The foundation seeds are called the registered seeds. So the ordering is very complex. Every time people go with papers, and after 6 months they reconcile the demand. So the demand reconciliation was getting very difficult. So the farmers didn't get these seeds. So this application was developed so that the demand registry can happen online as well as in real time. So once the farmers are giving the orders are directly going to the Department of Agriculture or the seed farms who are producing the seeds. So they don't have to run with files and papers. So this was the primary objective. So that's why the app is called demand forecasting for early generation seed. There are many other things you will find in the short pitch that I have already uploaded. So this is the basic thing. What was the basic heart of this application? So we have to get the demand in situ and as fast as possible. So that was for the Myanmar. It was started in rice, but right now it has been even scaled up for other crops and for other regions. And so that was for Myanmar, and the other one was for Uganda, and it is actually, its objective is different: seed tracking and tracing. So there are the seed enterprises as well as the local seed businesses. They are doing the seed business, getting their early generation seed, and they're doing the seed business, but they cannot track or trace where the seeds are going and where the seeds are coming from. Even the seed certification agency doesn't know where to do the seed. I would say when and how to conduct the field inspections, and when and how to. So it was all paper based, and right now what we are try to do is just to streamline the seed quality assurance system. That is, they have many certificates or permissions for any kind of seed growers who are already trying to grow the seeds, get the early generation seed, and to go for seed businesses. They have to submit a lot of applications. So these all applications happening on paper. So these are called and again, once you are planting the these foundation seeds, you have to submit another form called the planting returns. So all these things sometimes created some delays within the quality assurance system. So this system of Uganda was primarily objectives was only 2 things. One, to track and trace wherever the seeds are moving within the moving from the government side to the seed grower side, as well as from the seed grower side to the consumers. We need to track and trace. So we are giving numbers and inventory numbers to all these whatever the inventories we are having. And the next thing is to streamline the quality assurance process. So all the submissions of the forms are happening online with the help of that application. So these are the basic things that this application is doing. There are many other things. There is a marketplace. There are so many other things that can be seen from the again, those details will be found in the videos. So these are the two applications of these two countries that we have done. So that's the whole thing. If you have any questions, you are welcome to ask. Yeah, over to you, James.
Okay, thanks very much, Arnab. Very clear. Now, in your answer, Bertha, but I'm going to take Bertha's answer as a point of departure here. We heard about some of the complexity with working between, for example, public and private parties around putting these digital tools together. But what happens with ownership of the digital tools? How do people take on or embed and become the owner or the manager of these tools? And I'll put this as an open question to any of you who want to come forward. Did you encounter any power issues or shifts in roles, expectations, for example, about who takes on and runs these tools? Maybe you could tell us something about that.
James, we have a question in the chat box from Enoch Mereka.
Okay, I'll come to that one shortly. Let's just deal with the question I just posed now to the panel. Ronnie, perhaps you could jump in and say something about the ownership of these tools in your experience.
Yeah, it's a very important question, and of course, when we set out to do this, we first met with the farmers and we asked them, we would like to contribute to this issue of not being able to access seeds in Nepal in an easy and effective and efficient way. And so we put this to them as an idea, and they said, yeah, that sounds interesting, and work it out and then show it to us. We will give you feedback. So we went through this whole process, interactive process of designing the prototype, as Jakob has already demonstrated. Then we show it to the farmers. And from the beginning, it was clear that this was to be their tool. And luckily in Nepal, we have the association, the National Association of Community Seed Banks, and they organize themselves. It's set up as a legal entity. And so, we have, after testing it and showing it to them, we have kind of given it to them. It's their digital tool for use. And Pitambar and the team, we are there to, first of all, to see what is happening, and if it's actually being used, and if there are issues, we can try to solve it. So I think this is something that needs to be considered from the very beginning. It's not, you cannot wait with that till the end to answer that question. Whose tool it is? It should be addressed from the beginning and made clear to the users. And I think we went through this in a quite in a transparent way, and I think it's clear that this belongs. This is a tool for the farmers, and not for us to do anything with. We are there to support them right now, and if there are issues, we can try to solve them. Pitambar, maybe you want to add something if I missed something important.
Thank you, Ronnie. I think you have made it clear. Yeah, the tool is, we used public money to develop that kind of tool, and that is owned and operated by farmers organization, as mentioned by Ronnie, and it's publicly available. And so far we haven't received any issues or comment on ownership or management of that our seed app. And what we have declared in that app is already if there is any issue related to exchange of seed and information or ownership of seed and information, then they should follow the national law, national legislation that we have declared in that our seed app. So I should say so far we haven't received any this kind of issues or comment yet. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd now like to just put the same question in a way to Jacob and Berta. Also in Ethiopia, developing and implementing the seed exchange tool, or the seed information exchange, that had quite some implications for people's own functions. Maybe you could tell us a little bit something about that, and how did you go about reassuring stakeholders?
Should I go or you, Jacob?
You'll be better. And I can say something about ClimOp as well after that. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so I think in Ethiopia, actually, the main challenge has been that we have developed something for the public system, and then the public system didn't have the technical capacity to take over the platform. So that's because in sense of ownership, I think they felt it was for them and it was made for them, but they did not have the capacity of taking over, and they were like expecting us to be that technical partner, right? And I think that's something we need to work differently, because that was also because at the beginning nobody talked clearly about these roles. We are just bound for a certain time, and then after that we do not have the capacity of running the platforms. So they need to understand that somebody in the public sector needs to take over and do this. But yeah, that's still challenging.
Okay, yeah, I think it's an important recommendation or a design consideration indeed, so that everybody is clear on their roles, on what's going to happen with the end product, on who it is being designed for, and where this sort of service break actually takes place. Thanks very much. Now, Jacob, you can add something about ClimOp.
Yes, it's good. Yeah, also maybe I was just thinking about the Ethiopia case as well, where we did have a very high level commitment even from the minister to support it. But then when you really go into the details, it's institutionally also very complex to actually get it done, right? So maybe the capacity exists, but it's not in the right department of the ministry, things like that. So I like in general terms, what we need to do better, I think, in many of our projects is to set expectations very at the beginning. Like people, there's still very strong expectations that you basically come with a product in a box, basically, right? So yes, there's all fine co-design, etc. But the concept people have in their mind is almost like a Microsoft license. You come with a finished product. Here it is, and now we implement it. And actually, the process is not that. It's really the product doesn't exist yet. You have a piece of paper and a pen. That's it. That's where we start. We have a lot of capacity to build it. That people need to trust that we have that capacity. So it really turns the way of working a little bit around. So then also at the end, these questions about capacity, who's going to support it, etc., are not really so clear at the beginning. So this kind of from the beginning and also repeated. What is the process? What are the expectations? What is our role in it? What is your role in it? Repeat it almost every meeting that you have. I think that's something that we should get better at, and we've seen that in several processes that this expectation, it always comes up. Somebody's replaced, somebody else comes in, and this old expectation is still then impressed on your project. It can derail your co-design process. Then about ClimOp more specifically, about like this ownership. So ClimOp is in a way it's a platform, so you don't need to own it in the sense of install it on your server. You can just use our version on the web. Everybody's free to use it. And then the things that we've done to kind of create a sense of ownership is, for example, creating communities, even WhatsApp groups around particular projects, for example, that use the platform together. You can exchange things. If it goes wrong, we can really get a sense of where they are through these WhatsApp groups. That is one important tool. And also in the beginning of the project, So this is for variety testing most of the time, also some other agronomic practices, but most of the time it has been about variety testing. Walking through the whole process by setting up a protocol together helps a lot. So it's not just saying, okay, this is how you develop a protocol, now you go, but we do take them by the hand the first round. We go through it because it's not only a software, it's also a different approach to on-farm testing. It's a crowdsourcing approach. So there's a number of concepts that people have to like switch. We also have these kind of expectations coming back, right? So what is the role of a farmer in participatory research? Even that question, people come with expectations. So developing the protocol together is very important. And sometimes in the third session of developing these protocols, we still have very basic questions about the approach. So you notice that by really like putting together this protocol together, you get clarity about the approach. So you avoid surprises basically when you really start to distribute the seed. So you start to prepare packages to hand out and things like that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Now, Jakob, then a question came in from Enoch Mareka. Thank you for your question. And since you talked at the beginning about user-centered design, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how empowerment of stakeholders comes into the design process or design thinking. And if anybody also in the panel has an example, please do feel free to jump in also.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's also an issue there, right? That people think you come as a technical team, so you have the expertise to develop something. So yes, we can ask a number of questions, but people that take up this kind of designer role in a real co-design process actually takes an effort. It's not that people kind of automatically fit into that role and say, yes, this is what I want. So the prototyping process should help in this empowerment. So by really converting ideas into paper prototypes that you can still change, right? So also when you draw it on a piece of paper, people notice that you can still change it, right? You don't come with something fixed. That's also a kind of a pitfall. If you come with something that looks pretty sophisticated in an early stage, people think it's fixed. It's difficult to change. So if you come pretty early with kind of very simple prototypes on paper, where people easily see, yes, we can change it, we can comment, and you make a quick change. That helps in terms of empowerment, so that people really feel that they can contribute and they can have this kind of co-design role in it. So that is maybe my comment, James.
Yeah, and yeah, I want to add in here because I'll be talking for the two applications that we designed here for Myanmar and Uganda. And if I'm talking about the ownership as well as the empowerment questions, we should always take care of the needs, and whatever the gaps are, it should always come from bottoms up. So it's not that we have some crazy idea in our mind and we are just putting it on the whole system. So in both the cases, it happened just the opposite. In Myanmar, the Department of Agriculture, the Director General, before even starting of the project, he had a dream of digitalizing this whole system of seed ordering, or the early generation seed ordering. So that thing came from there, which we developed. That was one thing. Another thing is that whenever we are developing these programs, when we are drawing up the algorithms, or when we are setting up the logics, in every step we should involve the people who will be the end user. So this takes some time. The prototype, forget about prototyping, comes much later, but developing the algorithms, it has to come building bit by bit from the people who will be using it. Like Uganda, in all the meetings, though it happened fully online, we didn't go there, but in all the meetings, the ministry people were already there, and the seed certification agency representatives were there. They provided their inputs, and the whole development happened in front of their own eyes. So we have to take into consideration that when we are developing the algorithms, we have to have the stakeholders within the confidence. From there, we'll have a lot of ideas in our minds, but everything may not be needed, and there are some things that we might miss that they will get. So we should always have all the stakeholders while the making of the algorithms. So that's I wanted to chip in here.
Thanks very much, Arnab. I'm going to stay with questions from the chat just for a moment. And it's still about this topic and this concern about ownership, particularly now after a project lifecycle may have ended or a project commission may have ended. And maybe one of you could say, you know, how do you support an organization in country to really take on the physical ownership of a database and the maintenance and the administration of the tool? So it can be user accounts, all of these. Maybe you could say something about what support is needed to, you know, extend the life cycle of tools after a program or project.
Shall I start?
Please, of course.
I think in Nepal, what we have done is like we supported community seed banks to together with Biodiversity and National Gene Bank and other organizations. We supported to establish that national network of community seed banks, and we together helped them to develop this seed app. Then yes, we don't have they don't have a regular project, but for the time being, as Liebert is working as a secretariat for providing space and other services for them as a secretariat. But in recent days, like they are also doing business of seed and other local variety-based food products, and they are earning income, and we are helping them to build their capacity to operate the continue operating that seed app. That's why. I think if we support for another few years to them, they will be able to continue operating that seed app on their own. So we are focusing more on building the capacity of Community Seed Bank Association of Nepal, who is like a owner of the seed app.
And one thing about practical experience regarding the question, the very viable question, how it should sustain. So normally the two apps that I was talking about was built with the donor money. One was from the UNOPS and the other was again the government of Netherlands. But what we try to do is we try to embed in what do we need in terms of a sustainability of an application, because these applications are all data driven. As much as people use it, it will self-sustain. But there are still certain things of sustainability comes in, like hosting, maintenance. So it is talking just practically, not much systemically, but talking practically, that what we did is we added the costs for 5 more years, the hosting costs and all these things, maintenance costs, till the even after the project ends. And we hope that because all these applications will be owned by the government. So in case of Myanmar, it was owned by the Department of Agriculture. In case of Uganda, it was owned by the MIFE, that is the Ministry of Agriculture. And here, after that, we hope that after 5 years of we moving out of the project, that it will be embedded within the system. So we even give advice regarding how they can embed we make clear noting of the budgets, and then so that this amount of these are very small amount of money that needs to be spent for hosting and all the other maintenance contracts and everything, because these are quite practical things which we many times we forget. But as long as the people are using it, because you have to register, you have to use it, as long as you're using it, the more data you put inside it, the more accurate it becomes, and more and more people, it will self-sustain itself. So that's the practical thing of it I wanted to chip in here.
Great. I can say something about it, James. Or
please go ahead.
Yeah. So for the Klimop platform, what we have designed, and we're still developing, but is a way in which we can charge commercial use of the platform. So we have signed an agreement with a company that will do the charging, sending the invoices and things like that, and will maintain the service. So that will kind of take away a little bit of the burden from us to do that. It's difficult for an international organization to do that, but that's why we have private sector, right? So so we can have a nice balance between, say, the public function of the platform to keep supporting breeding programs and different seed systems in the public sector, and support it also through projects and through CG breeding programs and so on. But on the other hand, also to be able to scale. So we had several companies interested in using the platform. In the beginning, they could use it for free. Now we're going to charge them not a usually it's expensive. It's not going to be very expensive, but it's going to help us maintain a good quality technical service. So it's interesting to see how we can develop these kind of private public balances, so to say, in the exploitation of the platforms that we generate. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we've been talking about design and development, but it can also be that you can look at adapting existing platforms, existing tools that are out there. And we have a question from Anne McGills here in the chat, and it's about your experience in adapting and using existing tools. Maybe you could say something on that, one of you, and in particular, if anybody has experience with the Quick Trials app, you could maybe reflect on its benefits.
Maybe I can go as well. It's a trial app that is kind of close in the same space as ClimOp, right? It facilitates the implementation of trials. In this case, we haven't been adapting it because we saw a need for something different in that same space. But in another way, we're always adapting existing tools, right? So we use a lot of open source existing platforms or tools that already exist. So most of the platforms that we develop are based on existing open source components. So for example, Open Data Kit is an important one. There's something called ODK Tools that we actually maintain and is also used by others. FormShare is something that we also maintain as a digital group, but it can also be used by other users and is being used. So it's always about a number of components that you already have, because a lot of these things repeat across projects, right? So many of these platforms actually, if you kind of open and you look at the engine, the engines can be quite similar in a way, because we repeat the use of these existing components. So in a way, we are always adapting existing platforms. But what we see many times in a particular context, so for example, with the on-farm testing, we discovered that the existing trial tools didn't do what we wanted to do, or they were too complex. You could set them up, you could combine them with other tools, but we wanted to streamline things a little bit more, and we had a number of other concepts coming out of the design process. But there's this important principle, right, of reusing tools. So if there's an existing platform, then we would use it. If there's no existing platform, we can still reuse components of, and especially if they're open source, right? I think Quick Trials, well, it's a commercial application. I don't know if there's any insight, if there's any open source code. Probably there is, but we would not be able to easily reuse it. So it's also about having this, so that there's benefits of using commercial tools. But for many things that we do prefer to contribute to open source tools and create a community around it. So there's also a question about like the academic community, etc. That also allows us to kind of draw in the academic community to help us to build these tools. So in our case, University of Warwick, University of Wageningen, etc. have contributed code for the analysis, for example. And that's easy because it's open source. So it's also published, it's open. Other people can also use it for other tools. So when you do these kinds of things, it's a little bit like shooting a rocket to the moon, but you also develop Teflon, basically, right? So you develop all these pieces of code that also serve others to achieve other goals, basically, to cook, or prepare an egg, something like that. Your goal is to go to the moon. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. And indeed, you addressed there, thanks to the question from SL on involving academia. For a final question now from the audience, we have a question from Enoch about blending and mixing with additional communication channels, and in particular about how the outputs and the findings or summaries perhaps of data are shared wider than the users of the tools. Berta, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
You are. Maybe you could say something in your experience in Ethiopia about generating outputs from the database and what happens with them.
So I think I have a better example. Like we also developed Ushauri, that is an advisory service for farmers, and we have done this in Kenya and Tanzania. And it's a voice-based IVR service. Farmers can access radio-like content, and then they can also contact their extension agents through this hotline. So yeah, I would say actually when we developed Ushauri, our starting point was this comment that farmers do really like radio, but they miss the programs a lot of times because they are like at certain time during the day. So if you're out in the field and you didn't have the opportunity, then you miss it. So our idea was like how we could integrate radio into a advisory service. So how to make radio available 24/7. And that's the principle behind Ushauri. And also it's, so all the content is driven by the needs of farmers. So we start with a pool content, but then throughout the time they make questions, requests, and then we update the content based on what they are demanding. So
okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much, Berta. Now I'll just write. This is the first I've heard. The app is called Ushauri, and it might be quite new for many of us in the audience. So I'll try and get some information on that from you and Jacob. I'll put that on the ICD Africa website alongside the other tools, because indeed it sounds interesting. Now, Pitamba and Ronnie, maybe the same question to you about how you go about the outputs of the tool in Nepal.
I think like we haven't developed that kind of mechanism that CDF. It's very simple. It provides like information about the local varieties conserved by community seed banks, and if anyone would like to get the seed, then they can directly contact. That's all, you know, what we have included in that seed app. So. And we do monitor sometime with community seed banks if they got any request for getting seed, and we try to document. But so far, what we have been facing some challenges is there are some challenges like many farmers yet do not have like Android app or something like that, and the seed app is accessed by the demand for seed is limited yet, and we are thinking of like promoting through different means and approaches. So I can say now among the farmers the use of that seed app is limited.
Okay, thanks very much. Now the time is ticking by. We have just a few minutes left. And what I'd like to do is to go sort of one by one through all of you gifted panelists with your experiences. Now we have about 60 to 70 people or so in the audience, and I'm sure many of them are like me and have a limited connection and understanding about the design and development process for a digital tool like this. But given that many of our colleagues are here with us today, they might have an interest in getting involved in such a process. And what I would like is that you could distill some key recommendations, either a do or a don't, based on your experience to stop to stop us, all of us newbies, making the same mistakes. So we'll go through the screens as I see them, which Berta, unfortunately, means you're last. Maybe Ronnie, you could kick us off. What would be a key recommendation you could give to the audience?
Yeah, I think it's very, very important to discuss with the end users, what it could look like and how it could be used, and maybe if possible, do a kind of scenario. Have users kind of try it out, even if you don't have the final tool already in your hands. So yeah, make it more interactive, I think, even than we did in Nepal, and build that in from the beginning. And that could mean that you need more time and also more resources that you should put into your project proposal, or whatever you get the resources from. So I think we tend to underestimate the time and effort it takes to come to something useful, to a useful end product. Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot, Ronnie. So then Jakob and then Pitambar.
Yeah, a do is maybe try to, as much as possible, involve not only expertise in informatics but also in digital design. Right, it's an actual discipline. It's actually, people get PhDs in this, and some people are really good at it. So if I think it's really useful to get this kind of expertise in the different teams. Of course, we need content experts. We need people, informatics people, but also digital design in itself is a discipline. So the don't is don't always try to do this on your own. Yes, it's possible to develop an app, and sometimes very successful as well. But I also think there's a case for developing this kind of expertise inside our organizations and also in partner organizations to continue developing and getting to higher levels of expertise. So it's also, I think, a growing awareness of this discipline, and it's a young discipline, but also in terms of training people in the teams, etc. It's not always necessary to have somebody with a PhD in digital design. That's not what I'm saying, but it is something where we can also develop a bit more capacity, basically. In terms of don'ts, don't try always to do everything on your own. There's lots of people that are helpful, that can help you, that can advise you about what are other options, what are ways to get here in general terms, and keep on target, basically. Look at the goal, maybe not always at the means. There are many ways to get to Rome, basically. So there's many ways to get to support activities with digital tools. Don't fix on one solution at the beginning of a process. Look around first, talk with people, look at collaborations, what is there already. I think that's an important one as well.
Thanks very much, Jakob. Pitambar, are you still with us? I think you might have dropped away. Yeah, okay. Then Arnab, and then last but not least, Berta.
Yeah, so I would say the first of all, the most important do is, I have just mentioned in the last thing that I was saying, that we should involve the stakeholders. It's a big thing to say, but it is always good to, when you are doing the planning, when you are doing the blueprinting, or when you're doing the development of the logics and everything, you always should, because if you miss out in that, you will get some comments at a later stage, then we cannot make any more changes. So that's a big do that we have to do. We have to involve the person who will be using it, or the organizations who will be using it while making the algorithms. The second part is, we have to plan the whole logic in one time. So from the start to the end, whatever we are going to do, whatever we want to achieve, everything should be planned to the last detail on paper. we should know what's going to happen when we click this, and where what data we want, and what should happen when we click this, or what should happen when we enter this what we are going to do with this information, where this data will be stored, how it is going to be retrieved. Every small details has to be done to the last detail, and improvising here doesn't work. So that's the next thing I would say. So you just in between improvisation doesn't always work. So it's always good to do all the planning beforehand. So those are the two I would say the do's that we have to do in this case. So these two are the most important things I would say. And of course, you have to think about the sustainability that I have also discussed, and many had discussed the ownership and sustainability. Those come later, but again, we should have these planned beforehand. Before we are budgeting, before we are doing anything, we should plan everything ahead. So planning and making of the algorithms and involving the stakeholders are these are the most important things that we should do, and these will pay off. These will pay off. It might look heavy in the beginning, but these are going to pay off later on. Yeah, that's what, James. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Arnav. Really wise words. Berta.
Yeah, okay, I would say, of course, work with the user and spend time understanding the user, as Ronnie said. And you maybe need to allocate more resources to that, and that's fine. I think it's very important. Also, have everybody from your team involved in the process, because this is a collaborative process and it's not one person doing the whole work. Everybody has ideas. Everybody has to understand what are we doing here. And then I would say, do not think this is a linear process. So it's fine to come back and notice that some of your assumptions were wrong and change them. And like sometimes you came up with an idea, you test it and it doesn't work. So it's fine, you can just keep on iterating. So don't think it goes, you are at the pilot and that's it, that's the end. The pilot is part of the iteration, and maybe after piloting you need to go back to prototyping and you need to do more interviews. So you need to understand better that that is an iterative process and it's completely fine. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. I do look at the clock now. I'd like to thank all of you panelists. Also, it's a shame that Tambak couldn't make it to the end, but his power is troublesome today. A reminder to all of you in the audience. First of all, thanks for being with us today for this short reflective hour. The videos remain accessible, so you can still find out more about the tools via the ISD Africa website, and there'll be some contact details there for all of the panelists today. To you panelists, I again want to say thanks. For me, it was really interesting to hear your reflections. I think from my side, the message is very, very clear that the tools themselves can have a really strong impact in seed systems, but that, not to underestimate the design process and the design considerations that need to be happening. That it's a real collaborative process, and if the goal is to change the system, really involve the system and bring people with you on this design journey, and make sure everybody understands their own expectations, their own roles, and what's going to happen afterwards. So much more than we're talking about digital tools, we're really talking about the impact of digital tools on the system itself. So if you have, again, thanks very much, really insightful. With that, I'd like to bring our hour together to a close. I noticed that some people have been coming in and out. The recording will be published as soon as possible on the ISD Africa website also. So if you've missed anything, you can check out there. With that, thank you very much. Have a very nice morning, afternoon, evening where you are. And considering I also don't operate this platform, I'd like somebody to end the webinar momentarily.
Don't worry,
James.
James.
Everybody, a very nice day.
Okay, I'm gonna end to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, bye.